Alright, what's going on, folks? Today I wanted to finally talk to you about World War III and what's been going on with it recently. I want to go over World War III's history, how it got to where it is today, and talk about some of the things I find good and bad about the game. Finally, I would like to compare some of World War III's features with Battlefield's latest installment. So originally, World War III released back in October of 2018 and actually had a damn decent player number with a peak of over 11,000 players and an average of 3,800 players in that month according to Steam charts. I think many people at the time referred to it as the Battlefield killer. You can't see it, but I'm doing air quotes. Granted, a month before World War III released, EA gave us Battlefield 5. Now I myself actually played quite a bit of Battlefield 5, but it just did not belong in the lineup of some of the great Battlefields we've played over the year. It just palled in comparison to 1942, Battlefield 2, the Bad Company series, and Battlefield 3 in my opinion. Now you would think that World War III could keep those player numbers, especially with quite a bit of pushback on Battlefield 5 from the community at that time. I would also like to note that a lot of people seem to be hoping for a modern Battlefield game after Battlefield 1 went to the World War I setting, thus providing an even bigger opportunity for World War III to do good in that climate. However, just 2 months in, the average dropped by more than 90%, with the peak player numbers only hitting 840, a brutal drop of 93%. Now fast forward to April of 2019, and the player numbers are barely high enough to fill a single 20 versus 20 server. Then a free weekend in June was it actually pulled quite a bit of new blood into the game, including myself. I was so impressed with the game at the time, I immediately, after the weekend was over, bought a copy for myself and some of my friends just so we could keep playing the game after the free weekend would be over. However, 2 months later, the game had totally died again, and this time it seemed for good. More than a year later, in August of 2020, the developers decided to turn the servers off for a while they would work on the game and moved from a paid to a free-to-play model for any future release. Fast forward again to November of 2021, just a couple of months ago, and finally it seemed like World War III was coming back. Veterans, aka people who paid for the game in the past, like myself, could play a closed beta version of the revamped World War III. I played this and it actually felt very different from the game I remembered playing back in 2019. Weirdly enough, when they opened the beta up to everyone, you could and still can buy a pack from their store giving you access to the game. It feels a lot more similar now to the version I played a couple years ago, so I'm not really sure what happened with that in-between version. Now, World War III peaked at over 3,400 players last November, the second highest peak since the game's release back in 2018. The average players also hitting a second highest peak in December of last year. Now personally, I've had some small issues getting into servers with a full 20 versus 20. It felt like the longer a game progressed, the more people leave the game, usually on the leaving side, and their slots just wouldn't end up being filled. Now it's obviously 2020, we're in the middle of January, and there's definitely a slight downwards trend in the player numbers. I think that the World War III dev team needs to worry less about Twitch drops and more about adding new content, mostly new maps. However, I do want to talk about what I think World War III is lacking later on in the video. Now let's talk about what I think World War III does really well, which is honestly able to be condensed into one word: customization. I have to give the devs of World War III a ton of credit for not just the character customization, but also the weapons. For the characters, you have a ton of different pants, gloves, headgear, vests, and faceware to choose from, potentially millions of different combinations to just look slightly different from other soldiers on the battlefield, but nothing very outlandish, as we've seen trickle into Rainbow Six Siege over the last couple of years. However, let's be real, the real cool part about World War III is all the gun and loadout customization that's possible. For example, this Polish MSBSK rifle has 25 different primary and 11 secondary backup sights, with a further 8 underbarrel attachments, 5 different magazine choices, 9 sight-mounted attachments such as lasers and flashlights, and respectively 3 and 8 variants for the barrel and muzzle. You have an insane amount of options to pick from. After you customize your secondary, which can also be another full-size weapon if you don't go over your weight limit, you have to decide what type of armor plating and helmet armor you want to bring. And again, this is where I want to commend the devs for going a step beyond Battlefield. You can opt for one of 3 different chest armor plates, which go from light and barely providing any protection above pistol calibers to very heavy and providing protection against all but the heaviest rounds. For your head, you can choose to be protected against just pistol caliber ammo, or go one level up and pick titanium based material, which should protect against intermediate caliber rounds as well. Now, wearing these types of armor doesn't make you impervious to damage altogether, but it will definitely mitigate some of it, allowing you to hopefully eliminate enemies before they finish you off. It does mean that headshots are very important in this game, as unlike Escape from Tarkov, there are no face shields or anything protecting the face from getting shot. We'll talk about headshots just in a little bit. What I really like is the customization for the point streaks that are kind of comparable to Call of Duty's kill streaks in a way. As the name implies, it's based on points gained. Now, whether this is from killing, capturing, or healing, these also don't go away when you die, which is a great change from how Call of Duty does it, because it means people aren't incentivized to camp, to get a high kill streak, to get cool call-ins. This goes a little further than just selecting 3 strikes, as they are called, and being done with it. Some of these can be customized to a big degree. Just keep in mind, when customizing, for example, this Leopard tank, which already costs 6,500 points to call in, the cost will only go up. If you, for example, want to take off the 50 caliber machine gun and replace it with a 40mm grenade launcher, you're going to have to pay extra for that. Same goes for APS, different main guns. The more you adjust and change, the more expensive it will be to call in-game. Something I would like to mention is World War III's weird mix of realism and arcade. We have the choice between all of these armors, with friendly fire being turned on permanently, though I haven't found many griefers abusing that just yet. Firefights are short with a very fast time to kill. However, looking at that fact, you can actually take multiple shots to the face or head before dying, which feels really out of place in this game. It's just a very weird choice mixed with all the other more realistic options they went with. If we're talking about this realism and arcade mix, I have to mention the vehicles and their gameplay. Whereas the infantry gameplay is mostly rewarding, realistic, though personally I find it a bit frustrating regarding the headshots, the vehicle gameplay is just a mess. Streamed the game back in November when it just came out and went a whole round without using a single round of ammunition while driving around an APC, running over people until half the enemy team seemed to come together with RPGs and more so anti-tank mines to put a literal stop to me. Not only do vehicles feel very fast and agile, they are kind of broken or OP even on some maps, most of which I feel are also in need of an upgrade or change, but I want to talk about maps in a little bit. For some reason, the developers thought it made sense for this semi-realistic game to have all vehicles have access to a third-person camera as well as their first-person one. You can drive around your Need for Speed-esque APC, blasting enemies all while being perfectly capable of keeping an eye on most of your surroundings. Add to this what I think might be desync or lag that vehicles seem to have, and hitting one with an RPG becomes very tough. As I mentioned, I want to talk about maps just for a little bit. There's only 2 game modes in World War III, the 20 versus 20, which is really their main game mode with bigger maps, with capture zones, as well as all sorts of controllable vehicles, and then their smaller 10v10 game mode, which is to get to X amount of kills team deathmatch style. I didn't really spend much time here since the 2021 relaunch, as I feel that's not really what World War III is about. The interesting twist on their domination game mode, which is the 20 versus 21, there aren't just 3 flags that have to be captured, there's actually 6. They're divided into 3 sets of 2 flags, A1, A2, B1, B2, etc. For a team to gain points, you need to own both A1 and A2, or C1 and C2. something that is actually an interesting change from the normal ABC like you see in Call of Duty or Battlefield, but usually it ends up with one team dominating and spawn camping the other team until most of them leave. It might just really be my bad luck, and I've been on the winning side and the losing side of this. I'm just hoping it's a different experience for other people, but that has been my experience so far. Talking about the maps, I have the most experience with the Moscow and Polyarny maps. The weird thing is that the Moscow map feels huge, while at the same time feeling very small. I'll try to explain. The spawns are opposite of each other, with one objective on the left side, one on the right, and one in the center. With anywhere from say 2 to 4 people in vehicles, this leaves about 17 or so people per side to attack 6 points on the map. Now the middle of Moscow is usually nicely contested with constant action, though the vehicles I talked about earlier really run rampant here with open sight lines and their amazing maneuverability. They can really pin a team down who has lost all 3 zones and cannot spawn on anything but their main base. However, mostly around A1 and A2, with this huge building and construction site, the combat seems to die down. A few random stragglers might find each other here. After knocking out the sorry dude who just ran 60 seconds to die in your ambush, you now have to spend quite some time running from A1 to A2 or vice versa, hoping you can jump on the point before the enemy respawns there. When an enemy occupies a capture zone, friendlies can no longer spawn there, making it hard to contest far away capture zones. Personally, I'd like to see a possibility for spawning near contested capture zones just to add some sort of counterattack capability, which would also reduce the amount of running you have to do currently. So is World War III the battlefield killer? In 2018, it seemed like with the weird marketing choice EA made for Battlefield 5 and the fact we wouldn't have another modern Battlefield game that year, World War III had a great chance at becoming an established gaming name. I personally think that the lower player count in game at 40 versus the more standard 64 was a weird choice and definitely makes maps feel a lot more empty, thus leading to more running and searching for enemies. The vehicle gameplay, a staple of Battlefield as a franchise, is just so much better with the customization of vehicles and guns being a point towards World War III. With Battlefield 2042's release and the general uproar from the community about it, I think World War III has been handed a very lucky second try after they couldn't make their game stick for more than 2 or 3 months back in late 2018, early 2019. Perhaps with more maps or more players per map, I could see more people wanting to jump into World War III from other shooters. But vehicles really need to be toned down to match the realism the infantry part of the game sets up. Maybe I'll be making a The Death of World War III video at the end of the year. I hope I don't have to. I'm actually looking forward to playing some more World War III, as I've been wanting a reason to jump back in. I just wish the devs would give us a reason by adding content, mostly maps or more players per map, rather sooner than later. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.